Welcome back to the Rowdy Studio. I'm Buzz Cutler with Jeff Owens, editor-in-chief of SceneDaily.com, and we're going over this list that Jeff put together of guys who have to step up in 2011, guys who may have to prove or reprove themselves. And you have at number 4, Kyle Busch. What does Kyle Busch have left to prove? I mean, the guy wins everything.
Yeah, that's a good question when you see his name on this list. On the track, not a lot. I mean, we know he can win races and win them in bunches and win in all 3 series. But again, the same issues cropped up last year that we've seen in the past, and that is the maturity, the judgment issues. He got himself in a lot of trouble last year, you know, with wrecking drivers intentionally. He had the whole spat with Kevin Harvick early in the season, the confrontation on pit road at Darlington, and that carried on throughout the season. You know, he gets into it in the garage with Richard Childress and gets punched, and then the whole thing carried on with Harvick all year long. And then at the end of the season, he wrecks Ryan Hornaday in a truck race and gets suspended.
You know what's ironic, Jeff, is I actually do think that Kyle Busch put effort into being a kinder, gentler driver, a more mature guy. I did see him putting effort into that, but it just, for some reason.
So did I. You know, we've talked about this for 3 years now. The new Kyle, you know, he's grown up, he's matured, he's changed and all that. And I agree. I think he has tried, and I think he is trying. I just think that his intensity and his competitiveness and a little bit of a temper gets the best of him sometimes, and it gets him in these situations.
Now, in some ways, Kyle Busch looks like a saint next to his brother, Kurt Busch, who's actually next on your list, 3rd in terms of drivers who have something to prove. Is really what he has to prove that he can be a nice guy? Is that the totality of what he has to prove?
Unfortunately, I think it is. You know, he just sort of went off the deep end last year.
He really did, man.
You know, some of the conversations and the tirades on the radio were just wild and crazy, and you know, it just really damaged his reputation. And it appears, you know, I know that at the end of the season they said that they had mutually agreed to part ways, but I think we all know that that was Roger Penske and the sponsors that made that decision. But what got Kurt in trouble was a series of incidents where just a lot of outbursts and tirades on the radio.
It was a pattern of behavior.
A pattern of behavior, and not just last season. It had gone on in prior seasons. And then at the end of the year, he just imploded. I mean, a couple of really ugly incidents during the Homestead race, one with a TV reporter and another with some unidentified passengers in an SUV. So I think he faces 2 huge challenges. One, remaking his image, proving that he can be not only a good driver, but a respectable person, a respectable representative of sponsors and of his race team. The other thing he's got to do is he's now going to be driving for really a mid-pack,
at best,
mediocre team that's never really done anything. I mean, they won the race at Talladega with Brad Keselowski, but this is a team that typically doesn't even run the full schedule.
Right.
They're usually a pick-and-choose part-time team that's competitive on the restrictor plate tracks, and that's about it. They don't have a sponsor. It's a single-car team, not a lot of resources. Owners got deep pockets. They're going to have some Hendrick engines, but this is a very suspect deal for Kurt Busch.
Right, and if Kurt Busch gets frustrated in Penske equipment, imagine how frustrating it's going to be in Phoenix Racing equipment.
Yeah, ultimate challenge not only for him to prove he can be competitive, but to maintain his composure.
All right, in second spot in your drivers who have something to prove is Denny Hamlin. You know, it seemed like last year was supposed to be his year, but he drank from the same water pitcher as Jeff Burton, I think, in last year. He was just nowhere.
Yeah. You know, it's very interesting what happened to him, and we've seen it before. A guy that comes that close to winning the championship and comes up just short the next year, they sort of fall off the cliff and struggle. And we talked about this early last year. Was Denny and his team sort of suffering a hangover of coming so close to winning the championship? He always denied that, but I got to think there's something to that. I mean, how do you come that close and be that good in 2010? He won 8 races and carried the point lead into the final race of the season. And then the next year, he won a race, barely made the chase, and struggled all year long.
Yeah.
And you know, that's really the only conclusion you can draw, is that they have a hangover from that, or just never really recovered from the disappointment of that sort of loss. He was never happy with the cars he was getting and the direction of his team. And as a result of that, we saw a major change during the offseason with Mike Ford leaving, and now he's got a new crew chief in Darian Grubb. And it'll be very interesting to see what those two can do together, particularly Grubb coming off this amazing championship run that he had with Tony. You know, he's a very laid-back, low-key guy. Will that be a better fit with Denny? This is a huge year for him to prove that he can come back and be a championship contender again.
The #1 guy, according to Jeff Owens, that has something to prove in 2011, there is hope. There is hope in the junior nation again. I mean, Dale Jr. did step up with Steve Letarte big time last year compared to the previous few seasons.
Right.
So what's left? He's got to get back to victory lane.
Got to win a race, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. You know, that's all. I mean, he wants to make the chase again. He wants to be consistent and build on what they had last year. But we talked to him in Las Vegas, and he said that's what it's all about. We got to win. We got to win now. And he made great strides last year. You know, Steve Letarte helped him out a great deal. They proved to be a good, solid combination. Made the chase, finished 7th in the final standings, and that certainly was a huge upgrade over what we'd seen in the previous 2 years. But he's got that long winless streak hanging over his head, 129 races now. And you know, Junior's always going to be probably at the top of a list like this because people expect so much,
right.
and he's got so much pressure. He will never live up to it. If he wins 6 races this year, we'll be sitting here next year asking why didn't he win 7.
Right.
He's just that kind of guy. You know, he's the most popular driver in the sport, and he's a guy that everybody pulls for because of his history, and he's such a good guy, and the sport needs him to do well because he is so popular and such a polarizing figure that everybody wants to see him do well, and that brings all this pressure with it. But I think the pressure now and the thing that he's got to prove is that he can win again. You know, it's been 3 years, and he's been in Hendrick equipment. And when you step into Hendrick equipment, people expect you to win right away.
Yeah.
And he's won 1 race, and it was on fuel mileage, and it's been 3 years. So I think more than anybody, he's got to get that monkey off his back, and he's got to win a race.
All right, that's Jeff Owens' list of 12 drivers with something to prove in 2011, but there are a couple of guys he didn't put on the list that I would have put on the list. We're going to come back and talk about those in one final video in this series.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.